Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, a while back we revisited the legendary Grand Theft Auto 4 and spoke about Fusion Fix, an open source community modification that fixes and enhances the notorious PC port. It's a must in my opinion to get the most out of a modern GTA 4 playthrough. That said, there's another GTA based project that I've had my eye on, and one I've seen featured in tons of videos already, albeit ones that also use expensive high-end hardware. This is the RTX compatibility mod by XOXOR4D. This utilises Nvidia's RTX Remix to add path tracing to the game, overhauling things like lighting, shadows and reflections. As you might imagine, it does take its toll on performance compared to the vanilla game, hence why most who showcase this are doing so with top tier hardware. For a bit of context, I started off my testing with an i9-14900K and RTX 5070, the best hardware I have to hand. This is running with the Ultra preset with Transformer DLSS mode set to balanced. I'll leave a link to the GitHub page which will also have installation instructions if you want to try this out for yourselves, but I wouldn't recommend playing GTA 4 all the way through like this unless you do have a really beefy machine. This is just, I think, to sort of give you an idea of how the visuals can look with path tracing added to this aging classic. And it's well worth a try if you have a compatible GPU. This is the latest release at the time of upload, version 1.2.1, and it's running along with a custom fork of Fusion Fix, which we mentioned at the start and can be included during installation. Now, I'm really sorry about this, but I had to just try out the whole cliche overcast skies and wet roads scenario, you know, like you see in those cyberpunk showcases as well. I've been guilty of it, but to be honest, I can see why people use such presets because the games do look really good, like here with the path tracing enabled here. We have the overcast skies, the wet roads, and it does look really good. This is sort of like the game looking at its best, and it's where the extra visual effects really stand out the most. So this time around, I'm using the same settings basically, but I've switched DLSS to performance. So I'm still using the i9-14900K and the 5070. I've also enabled frame gen here and set this to 2x. Anything higher than this with what is a low frame rate to start with can feel a little jarring. You can set it to 3 or 4x. But that feels really bad, like a motion sort of smoothing feature on a modern TV. It's horrible to play. I mean, I don't usually like frame gen anyway, but with 2x mode here, it actually feels surprisingly responsive, which is nice. And yeah, I just think the game looks so good with the rain effects and overcast skies. I know it's cliche, the wet roads thing has been going back to the days of San Andreas, but it does look pretty cool. The reflections on the cars, the headlights off the road, everything here really. And as you can see for the performance, well, we are certainly sacrificing a lot of it for these added visual effects, but it's well worth a try. That said, I don't want to keep this higher end hardware in my system. I want to test something a little more affordable. So sticking with the overcast theme here and moving on to my more budget orientated system, we have the Ryzen 5 3600, 32 gigs of DDR4 and an RTX 3050. We're running now with the Ultra preset and DLSS set to auto. This is just how the game defaulted when I fired it up, at least in terms of the DLSS. I think it was actually set to auto as well. Yeah, as we can see, I really like the way this looks, but the system does not enjoy running it very much, and I think this was to be expected. So we're going to start to work on a few little tweaks now, or just adjust the settings basically, and see if we can get a more playable experience out of this RTX path tracing overhaul. But I thought it was good to just showcase how it looks, first of all, running at the best settings with DLSS set to auto. Playable? Not really. I think we expected this, but I thought it was worth a quick test before we move on to actually adjusting a few things. So here we have the same mod installed here, but as you can see, we're running with the absolute lowest settings. This is the 8 gig 3050, so the superior of the two available 3050s. This also comes in a 6 gig flavour, which lacks some of the CUDA core count as well. Now, I don't think the low settings is completely necessary here, especially when it comes to the texture options, because this doesn't actually impact performance all that much, but I didn't know what to expect. We still have the Ultra preset for the mod itself, which I think is probably more of an issue here as opposed to the in-game settings. So after a couple of moments, I turned the in-game texture settings up to high simply because it's a night and day difference, and this is one of the biggest noticeable changes with the game. As you can see, the performance doesn't really change between the low and high in-game textures. I think the fact that we have this path tracing mod set to ultra is probably doing the most damage in terms of our frame rate, but this isn't the sort of hardware that you should be attempting to play this game smoothly on if you want to check out this path tracing mod. But I thought it was worth a try anyway, because I think most of us don't have high-end hardware, and while it's really cool to see the game running with path tracing on high-end hardware, it's always fascinating to see. Realistically, I think a lot of us are using lower-end systems, myself included. I mean, I daily drive a 9060 XT, before that 4060, and before that it was this 3050 here, along with an i5 12400F. So we're using the pretty ancient 3600. You will experience CPU bottlenecks, as is the case with GTA 4 here, but what we're going to do is see if we can improve performance a little bit on this more modest system. We're going to change DLSS to ultra performance mode, and we don't have the frame gen option here. Of course, we'll keep the graphics preset at ultra, and we'll see if ultra performance DLSS mode actually makes a difference. Well, as you can see here, it does. Now, bear in mind, all of the in-game sliders are like set to their absolute minimum. All the game settings that we can adjust are also set to their respective minimum, I think, which is clear, but you can still get a good idea of the changes that this brings with it when we look at the houses here, the buildings, the lighting overall. All of the effects are still noticeable. It's just a shame that it is sort of taken away from a bit by the actual in-game visuals, which we have pretty much decimated. Even like the glass and windscreen and stuff on this car looks pretty cool here. The frame rate is still hovering around 30 FPS, so still playable, I think. I mean, I've been playing this on an Xbox 360 for the past week. Yeah, I bought a 360 for like 50 quid on eBay. I was going to build a PC for similar money in 2026, see how they compared. And I swear GTA 4 runs at like 22 frames per second on that console. And I was surprised at how used to it I became in a very short amount of time. Like, I was just playing with 20 to 25 FPS over this past weekend, and I wasn't phased. I don't know why. Usually these days I'd be a bit more sensitive to frame rate, but I think because I've been playing on that console and now I'm playing here with like sub 30 FPS, it doesn't feel as bad, but I'm sure to a lot of you it may very well do so. It might be a bit jarring. But as I said, you shouldn't expect solid path tracing performance from this hardware. I just thought it would be interesting to see if we could at least experience it and get a gist of what was going on with this more modest setup. Now, because this runs with 30 frames per second, I saw no reason why we couldn't adjust the in-game detail sliders. So instead of putting them at 1, I changed them to 20, so it does enhance the visuals a bit. For the most part, you're going to be seeing about 30 frames per second. Now, we also have a couple of different DLSS options. We have transformer mode, which is going to look naturally better, of course, than the old CNN mode, especially when you go right down in terms of those presets. Like ultra performance with transformer is going to look a lot better than with CNN mode. But we don't have the option to choose between those here. What I'm going to do here then is enable ray reconstruction so that we can choose the transformer DLSS mode just to make things look a little better. I've also dropped the graphics preset to medium, as this doesn't take away from the visual overhaul too much, but it should help boost our performance. So I'll just make sure that everything is enabled how I want it. DLSS transformer, we have a few other upscaling modes to choose from, but of course DLSS is going to give us the highest frame rate. And here we are, so at least 30 frames per second. The game looks a lot better with the transformer mode enabled. There's a lot less shimmering around the outside of cars, and I think, as I said before, you still get a good idea of how things are supposed to look here with the medium preset. We are using very modest hardware here, but it's hardware that can actually make use of this path tracing mod. I think personally, if you want to play through GTA 4 with solid performance in 2026, just get the Fusion fix on its own. Take the visuals for what they are. You know, it's an aging game, but I think it still holds up visually. If you have beefier hardware, like a 5080, 5090, for example, and you want to just sort of give the path tracing mod a go, then you can do so knowing that your performance and frame rate isn't going to be too bad, especially once you've enabled frame gen. And it's a good showcase if you want to take a few shots. You're one of those YouTubers that likes to showcase various modifications. You can capture some really great footage with it as well. What I'm going to do now then is re-enable, no, we'll go with low. We'll change the preset to low. Still looks pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Obviously we still have DLSS enabled at ultra performance, so a pretty aggressive form of DLSS here. This is actually changed back to CNN mode. We'll disable ray reconstruction again just to see if this boosts things. Not really, it just looks a lot worse. Like when we remove ray reconstruction and then have the CNN performance mode, you can see like around the roofs of the cars there's a lot more shimmering, a lot more artifacts and effects. So I think you're best sticking with ray reconstruction even on lower end hardware here, just to clean up some of the edges and the visuals a little bit. But there we are. I think this is definitely worth checking out. I'll leave all relevant links down in the description below. I just had to test this on more entry-level hardware just to see, to be honest, and you can certainly make it work if you're willing to make a few more visual sacrifices, including DLSS. But yeah, let me know what you think down below. Give this a go for yourselves. Let me know how it runs on your hardware, and hopefully I'll be back with another hardware review in the next one. So thanks as always, and I'll see you then.